That's my seat, and I'm not moving for anyone. The words sliced through the first-class cabin like a blade, and 30 seconds before pushback, Flight 447 to London went silent. Not the good kind of quiet, the kind where everyone pretends they're not watching while absolutely watching. Because a young black woman in a faded hoodie and sneakers had just stopped cold at row 1, staring at the blonde in designer everything sprawled across seat 1A like she owned the oxygen itself. One seat, one refusal, one woman who wouldn't back down. What happened next didn't just delay a flight, it exposed a system, destroyed a career, and proved that real power doesn't need to raise its voice. Stay with me until the end. Like this story, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this journey travels. Arya Knox had learned a long time ago that the world made assumptions. Quick ones, loud ones, wrong ones. She'd learned to let them. At 28, she'd been mistaken for an intern at her own company, asked if she was here to clean at investor meetings, and had security called on her twice, once in her own office building. So when she boarded the 6:15 p.m. JFK to London flight in a hoodie, backpack slung over one shoulder, headphones around her neck, she knew exactly what people saw. Not the founder of Nebula Dynamics, not the woman whose aviation safety algorithms were quietly revolutionizing how airlines predicted mechanical failures. Just another kid who probably couldn't afford the seat. She didn't bother correcting anyone. She had bigger things on her mind. The flight attendant at the door, young, eager, name tag reading Bethany, gave her a practiced smile. "Welcome aboard! Can I see your boarding pass?" Arya handed it over without a word, already mentally 3 steps ahead. 12 hours. That's all she had. 12 hours to finalize the demo, lock down the European Aviation Consortium's approval, and close the deal that would take Nebula from groundbreaking to industry standard. $5 billion. 7 major carriers. A complete reshaping of predictive maintenance across commercial aviation. No pressure. "Oh!" Bethany's eyebrows lifted as she scanned the pass. 1A, wonderful. Right this way. Arya followed her into the cabin, the familiar smell of recycled air and expensive cologne washing over her. First class on this route was all cream leather and soft lighting, designed to make people feel like they were already somewhere else. Somewhere better. She turned into row 1 and stopped, because someone was already in her seat. A woman, mid-40s, platinum blonde hair in a severe bob, wearing what had to be a $4,000 cream pantsuit, was stretched across 1A like a cat in a sunbeam. Her Hermes bag occupied 1B. Her laptop bag sat in the footwell. Her phone was in her hand, and her expression, when she glanced up at Arya, was the kind of look you'd give a pigeon that had wandered too close to your table at an outdoor cafe. Vague. Dismissive. Annoyed. "Excuse me," Arya said, her voice even. "I think you're in my seat." The woman didn't move. She didn't even blink, just returned her gaze to her phone, thumbs moving across the screen with the lazy confidence of someone who'd never been told no in her life. "I don't think so," she said, not looking up. Arya felt something tighten in her chest. Not anger, not yet. Just that old familiar sensation of gears beginning to turn. The moment before you realized this wasn't going to be simple. She glanced at Bethany, who had frozen mid-step, smile still plastered on her face, but eyes beginning to show the first flicker of, "Oh no, what do I do?" panic. "Ma'am," Arya said, keeping her tone calm, "this is seat 1A. I have the boarding pass for 1A. Now the woman looked up, really looked. Her eyes traveled from Arya's worn Nikes to her hoodie to her face, and something shifted in her expression. Not recognition, calculation. "I'm sure there's been some kind of mistake," the woman said, her voice dripping with the kind of politeness that wasn't polite at all. "I'm Vivian Caldwell, Executive Platinum. I always sit in 1A on this route." "That's wonderful," Arya replied. "But today I paid for 1A, so you're going to need to move." Vivian's smile didn't falter, but it changed, sharpened. "Sweetheart, I think you're confused. This is first class. Are you sure you didn't mean to board through the other door? Economy is—" "I know where economy is," Arya cut in, her voice still calm but dropping half an octave. "And I know where first class is. And I know I'm standing in front of my seat, which you are currently occupying." The cabin had gone very, very quiet. Passengers in the rows behind were no longer pretending to arrange their belongings. A man in 2C had his newspaper frozen halfway to his face. The couple in 3A had stopped mid-conversation, both staring. Bethany looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. Let me just... The flight attendant's voice cracked slightly. She pulled out her tablet, fingers trembling as she tapped through screens. Okay, so, yes, seat 1A is assigned to, She glanced at Arya's boarding pass again. Knox, Arya, and... She bit her lip. Mrs. Caldwell, it looks like you're actually in 2A today. Vivian's expression didn't change, but her voice hardened. That's impossible. I'm executive platinum. I have over 2 million miles with this airline. I have status. There must be an error in the system. The system is fine, Arya said quietly. You're just in the wrong seat. For a moment, Vivian just stared at her. Then she laughed, a short, incredulous sound that wasn't really a laugh at all. Unbelievable, she muttered, shaking her head. She looked at Bethany like Arya wasn't even there. Is this really how you treat your best customers now? You're going to let this... She waved a hand vaguely in Arya's direction. Just waltz in here and... Ma'am, Bethany's voice was strained. The seat assignment is correct. I'm going to have to ask you to move to your assigned seat. Vivian's mouth thinned into a line. She looked back at Arya, and this time there was no pretense of civility in her gaze, just cold assessment. Fine, she said finally. She stood, slowly, deliberately, gathering her things with exaggerated care. But I'll be speaking to your supervisor and corporate. This is completely unacceptable. She stepped into the aisle, and Arya hoped, that would be the end of it. It wasn't. As Vivian moved past her, she paused, close enough that Arya could smell her perfume, something floral and expensive and overpowering. You know, Vivian said softly, her voice pitched just for Arya, I don't know how you managed to afford this ticket, but you might want to be a little more grateful for the opportunity. Some of us actually earned our place here. The words landed like a slap. Arya didn't flinch, didn't blink, just held Vivian's gaze with the kind of stillness that came from years of practice, years of biting back responses, years of being the only black woman in rooms full of people who thought exactly what Vivian thought, but usually had the sense not to say it out loud. Grateful, Arya repeated, her voice so quiet it was barely audible. Right. Whoop, Vivian smirked, actually smirked, and continued down the aisle toward row 2. Bethany looked like she might cry. I'm so sorry about that, Ms. Knox. Please, let me help you get settled. Arya said nothing, just moved into row 1, stowed her backpack, and sank into seat 1A. The leather was soft. The legroom was obscene. Everything about the seat screamed luxury, comfort, exclusivity. It felt like ashes in her mouth. She pulled out her laptop, opened it, stared at the screen without seeing it. Her hands were shaking, not with fear, with rage. The kind that started in your chest and spread through your limbs like fire. The kind that made you want to stand up and scream until the walls came down. But she didn't. She never did. Instead, she took a slow breath, closed her eyes, and counted to 10. Let it go, she told herself. You've got work to do. 12 hours, $5 billion. Focus. Behind her, she could hear Vivian's voice, sharp and insistent, talking to another flight attendant. Completely unacceptable treatment of a loyal customer. Someone needs to explain to me how that girl... Arya's jaw tightened. Ms. Knox? She opened her eyes. A different flight attendant stood beside her, older, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a bun. Her name tag read Diane. Yes? I just wanted to apologize for the delay, Diane said gently, and to offer you a glass of champagne while we finish boarding. On the house. Arya looked at her for a long moment. Diane's expression was sincere, sympathetic even. But there was something else there too, something that made Arya's stomach twist. Pity. No thank you, Arya said quietly. Are you sure? It's really no trouble. I'm sure. Diane hesitated, then nodded and moved away. Arya turned back to her laptop. The screen swam in front of her eyes. She blinked hard, forced herself to focus. Work. You have work, but the words on the screen might as well have been in another language. All she could hear was Vivian's voice behind her, still complaining, still convinced she was the victim here. 2 million miles, and they're treating me like I'm nobody. Absolutely disgraceful. Arya's fingers curled into fists. Breathe. More passengers were boarding now, filing past, some glancing curiously at the commotion in row 2, others studiously ignoring it. A businessman in 1B gave Arya a brief nod as he settled in, then immediately pulled out his phone and put in earbuds. Everyone pretending nothing had happened, everyone complicit in their silence. Arya stared at her screen, at the presentation she'd spent 3 months perfecting, at the algorithms that could save lives, prevent disasters, change everything, at the work that mattered. Focus on that, she told herself. Not this, not her. But her hands were still shaking. The cabin was nearly full now. The sounds of boarding, the rustle of bags being stowed, the murmur of conversations, the occasional ding of the seatbelt sign filled the air. Normal sounds, routine sounds, except nothing about this felt normal. Excuse me. Arya didn't need to turn around to know it was Vivian. The voice was unmistakable. Yes, ma'am? That was Bethany again, sounding exhausted. I need to speak with your supervisor, immediately. Ma'am, the captain is preparing for departure, and we really need to finish the safety briefing. I don't care about the safety briefing. I care about the fact that I have been humiliated in front of an entire cabin because your airline apparently values... Her voice dropped to a hiss, but Arya could still hear every word. Diversity hires over actual paying customers. The words hung in the air like poison gas. Arya's vision went white at the edges. She didn't move, didn't breathe, just sat there, laptop open, hands frozen above the keyboard, every muscle in her body locked tight. Don't, she told herself, don't give her the satisfaction. Don't. Ma'am, that is completely inappropriate. Bethany sounded horrified now. What's inappropriate is the way I've been treated. Vivian's voice rose. I have status, I have loyalty, and I'm being forced to sit in a lesser seat so that... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Arya closed her laptop, slowly, carefully. The click of it shutting sounded unnaturally loud in her ears. Then she stood. Every eye in first class turned to her. She didn't care. She turned around, faced Vivian directly for the first time since the confrontation began. Vivian was standing in the aisle by row 2, face flushed, gesturing wildly at Bethany, who looked ready to burst into tears. When Vivian saw Arya standing, she actually smiled, like she'd won something. Oh, wonderful, Vivian said, her voice dripping sarcasm. Are you here to apologize? Because I think that would be... No, Arya said. The single word cut through the cabin like a knife. Vivian blinked. Excuse me? I said no. Arya's voice was calm, dangerously calm. I'm not apologizing, I'm not moving, and I'm not going to stand here and let you finish whatever racist tirade you're working yourself up to. The color drained from Vivian's face. I am not... How dare you? I never said anything about... You didn't have to. Arya took a step closer. We both know exactly what you meant. Every person in this cabin knows what you meant. So let me be very clear. I paid for seat 1A. I am sitting in seat 1A. And if you have a problem with that, you can take it up with whoever you want. But you're going to do it from row 2. Vivian's mouth opened, closed, opened again. You can't... This is... She spun to Bethany, nearly shaking with rage. Are you going to let her speak to me like this? Bethany looked between them, clearly drowning. Ma'am, please, if everyone could just calm down. I am calm, Vivian shrieked. She wasn't. Ma'am, Bethany tried again. No, I will not be spoken to this way. I will not be treated like some kind of... She whirled back to Arya. You think you're so special? You think having one first-class ticket makes you... Ladies! The voice came from the front of the cabin, deep, authoritative, final. Everyone turned. The captain stood in the galley doorway. He was in his 50s, salt and pepper hair, uniform crisp, expression utterly unreadable. Behind him stood another flight attendant, tall, broad-shouldered, with the bearing of someone who dealt with far worse than an argument over a seat. The cabin went silent. The captain's eyes swept across the scene. Took in Vivian, red-faced and furious. Took in Bethany, pale and trembling. Took in Arya, standing perfectly still, expression neutral. "What's the problem here?" he asked. Vivian jumped on the question like a drowning woman grabbing a rope. "Captain, thank God. I have been trying to explain to your staff that there has been a terrible mistake with the seating, and this person has been incredibly rude and confrontational." "That's not what happened," Arya said quietly. The captain's gaze shifted to her. "And you are?" "Arya Knox, seat 1A. He nodded once, looked at Bethany. "Confirm the seating." Bethany's fingers flew across her tablet. "Yes, sir. Arya Knox, 1A. Vivian Caldwell, 2A. "There you go," the captain said. His tone was mild, but there was steel underneath. "Mrs. Caldwell, you're in 2A. Please take your seat so we can complete pre-flight procedures." Vivian stared at him like he'd spoken in a foreign language. "You can't be serious. I'm executive platinum. I've been flying this route for years. I always get 1A. "Not today." The captain's voice didn't rise, but somehow it filled the entire cabin. "Ma'am, we are now 15 minutes behind schedule. You have two choices. Sit down in your assigned seat or be removed from this aircraft. Those are your only options." The cabin felt like it was holding its breath. Vivian's face went through several shades of red and white. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "This is outrageous," she hissed. "Do you have any idea who I am? Do you know what I could do to your career?" "Ma'am." The captain took one step forward. Just one. But the temperature in the cabin seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Last warning, sit. Down." For a moment, Arya thought Vivian might actually do it. Might actually push this all the way to getting thrown off the plane. Part of her wanted to see it. But then Vivian's shoulders sagged, just slightly. The fight went out of her eyes. Not defeated, but recalculating, deciding this wasn't the hill to die on. "Fine," she spat. She shot one last venomous look at Arya. "But this isn't over. I'm filing a formal complaint. Against her," she pointed at Arya, "and against this airline. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." "We look forward to it," the captain said flatly. "Now sit down." Vivian turned and stalked, there was no other word for it, back to row 2. She dropped into 2A with a force that made the seat creak, yanked her seatbelt on, and stared straight ahead, jaw clenched so tight Arya could see the muscles jumping. The captain watched her for a moment, then looked at Arya. His expression softened, just a fraction. "I apologize for the disruption, Ms. Knox," he said. Arya nodded, didn't trust herself to speak. She turned and sank back into 1A, her legs suddenly unsteady. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, making her hands shake even worse than before. The captain lingered for a moment, then returned to the cockpit. The tall flight attendant, his name tag read Marcus, stepped forward and addressed the cabin at large. "Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your patience. We'll be departing shortly. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened and your seats are in the upright position for takeoff." His voice was calm, professional, like nothing unusual had just happened, like Arya's entire body wasn't vibrating with rage and humiliation and exhaustion. She opened her laptop again, stared at the screen, the presentation blurred in front of her eyes. 12 hours, she thought numbly. 12 hours trapped on this plane with her behind me. She wanted to cry. She wanted to scream. She wanted to disappear. Instead, she took a breath and started typing, because that's what she always did. That's what she'd always done. Put her head down, did the work, proved them wrong not with words, but with results. But God, she was tired. So tired of having to prove anything at all. Behind her, she heard Vivian's voice, low and vicious, speaking to someone. Maybe another passenger. Maybe on the phone. Absolutely unbelievable. That girl had the nerve. I don't care what seat she paid for. She doesn't belong here. Arya's hand stilled on the keyboard. Her jaw tightened, and for the first time since boarding, she let herself think about the phone in her pocket. The one with direct lines to people who could end this woman's entire world with a single call. "No," she told herself firmly. "You're better than that. Let it go." But the thought didn't leave. It sat there, coiled in the back of her mind, waiting. The plane's engines rumbled to life. The plane lurched forward, beginning its taxi toward the runway, and Arya felt every second of movement like a countdown. 12 hours, 7 time zones, one impossible deadline. And now, one woman behind her who'd made it clear exactly what she thought of Arya's presence. She forced herself to focus on the screen. The presentation was nearly perfect. 3 months of work distilled into 40 slides that would either change everything or prove she'd gambled 5 years of her life on a dream that was too big. The European Aviation Consortium didn't give second chances. 7 CEOs, 12 board members, billions in collective annual revenue. They'd agreed to the in-flight demo because Graham Sterling himself had vouched for her, had told them that Arya Knox wasn't just brilliant, she was the future. No pressure. Her fingers moved across the keyboard, making minor adjustments to the predictive algorithm displays, but her mind kept drifting back to Vivian's words. Some of us actually earned our place here. The implication sat in her chest like a stone, that Arya hadn't earned it, that she'd been given something she didn't deserve, that her presence in first class, in any space really, was somehow conditional, revocable, subject to approval by people like Vivian Caldwell, who measured worth in frequent flyer miles and designer labels. Ladies and gentlemen, from the flight deck, this is Captain Morrison. The voice crackled through the speakers, and Arya looked up despite herself. The captain who'd intervened, Morrison. We've been cleared for departure on runway 4 right. Flight time to London Heathrow will be approximately 7 hours and 15 minutes. We're expecting smooth conditions for most of the flight, with arrival scheduled for 7:30 a.m. local time. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for departure. The announcement ended. The cabin lights dimmed slightly. Around her, passengers settled in, reclining seats, pulling out books and tablets, some already closing their eyes for sleep. Arya couldn't imagine sleeping. She glanced out the window as the plane turned onto the runway. New York's lights spread out beneath them, a glittering carpet of possibility and promise. She'd come to the city 5 years ago with a laptop, a theory, and $1,100 to her name. Had slept on friends' couches, eaten ramen for months, coded until her eyes bled. Had been laughed out of investor meetings, told her ideas were interesting but unrealistic, that aviation safety was too complex for a kid fresh out of MIT to revolutionize. She'd proved them all wrong. And tonight, on this flight, she'd prove it again. The engines roared, the plane accelerated, pressing her back into the seat. The world outside blurred into streaks of light, and then lift. That moment of weightlessness, of leaving the ground behind, of defying gravity itself. Arya exhaled slowly. Beside her, the businessman in 1B was already asleep, head tilted back, mouth slightly open. Across the aisle, a woman in 1D typed furiously on her laptop, earbuds in, completely absorbed. Everyone in their own world. Behind her, Vivian's voice cut through the ambient noise like a knife through silk. Yes, I'm on the plane now, but you won't believe what just happened. Arya's shoulders tensed. She could hear every word. First class wasn't that big. The seats were spacious, the dividers tall, but sound carried, especially when someone wanted it to. This girl literally just walked on like she owned the place. I mean, she was dressed like she was going to the gym, and she had the audacity to tell me I was in the wrong seat. Arya's hand stilled on the keyboard. She should ignore this. Should put in her headphones, drown it out, focus on her work. But something kept her frozen, listening. Of course, the flight attendant sided with her. It's all this ridiculous DEI nonsense. You know how it is. They're so terrified of being called racist that they'll literally throw their best customers under the bus. The words landed like physical blows. Arya's vision blurred at the edges. Her breath came short and sharp. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to confront this woman, to make her understand that she wasn't some charity case or diversity checkbox. She was Arya Knox, founder of a company that was about to reshape an entire industry, and she'd earned every single thing she had. But she didn't move. Because what would it change? Vivian Caldwell had decided who Arya was the moment she saw her. Had looked at her dark skin, her casual clothes, her youth, and drawn conclusions that no amount of credentials or accomplishments would alter. People like Vivian didn't change their minds. They just got better at hiding what they really thought. Usually. I'm filing a complaint the second we land. I have 2 million miles with this airline. They can't treat me like this. Arya closed her eyes, counted to 10, then 20, then 30. Let it go, she told herself. You have bigger things to worry about. The flight leveled out. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Around the cabin, passengers began to move, stretching, heading to the bathroom, pulling down blankets and pillows from the overhead compartments. Diane appeared beside Arya's seat, that same kind smile from before. Can I get you anything, Miss Knox? A drink? Something to eat? Arya looked up at her. Diane's expression was gentle, sympathetic. There was genuine concern in her eyes. But there was something else too, that same pity Arya had seen before. The unspoken message. I'm sorry this happened to you. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. I'm sorry. As if Arya were the victim here. As if this were some tragic but ultimately minor inconvenience, like lost luggage or a delayed flight. As if it weren't the story of her entire life playing out in miniature at 30,000 feet. I'm fine, Arya said quietly. Thank you. Are you sure? The braised short rib is excellent tonight, and I'm sure. Diane hesitated, then nodded and moved on. Arya watched her go, then turned back to her laptop. The presentation stared back at her, and suddenly she hated it. Hated that she had to prove herself at all. Hated that she'd spent 3 months perfecting these slides, preparing for this demo, working 18-hour days to make sure everything was flawless, because she knew that she wouldn't get the benefit of the doubt. Knew that if anything went wrong, if there was even the slightest hiccup, they'd write her off as promising but inexperienced, too young, too ambitious, too something. She'd never been allowed to be just good enough. She'd always had to be perfect. And she was so tired. Behind her, Vivian was still talking, still complaining. The voice had become a constant background drone, like tinnitus. Always there, impossible to ignore. I mean, she literally had the nerve to accuse me of being racist. Can you imagine? Just because I expect a certain level of service, Arya's jaw clenched so hard her teeth ached. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, grateful for the distraction. A text from Marcus Chen, her CTO and co-founder. How's the flight? Ready to blow their minds? Arya stared at the message. Marcus knew about the seat thing. She'd texted him right before boarding, half venting, half laughing at the absurdity of it. He'd responded with a string of angry emojis and a promise to have champagne waiting when she landed. She typed back, "Flight's fine. Demo's ready. Let's hope they're impressed." The response came immediately. "They will be. You're about to change the game. Don't let anyone make you forget that." Arya smiled despite herself. Marcus had been with her since the beginning, had believed in her when she was just a grad school dropout with a wild idea and no business plan. Had coded beside her in that tiny apartment, had maxed out credit cards to keep the company afloat, had never once doubted that they'd make it. She wished he were here now. Another text. "Also, tell Vivian Caldwell I said she can go Arya laughed, actually laughed, a short, sharp sound that surprised her, and quickly locked her phone. A few passengers glanced over, curious, but she ignored them. She opened a new window on her laptop, pulled up the secure uplink interface. The demo required a live connection to Nebula's servers, real-time data processing across encrypted channels. Most airlines wouldn't allow it. The bandwidth requirements alone were astronomical, but Graham Sterling had personally authorized the setup, had called in favors, rerouted resources, made it happen. Because he believed in her. Because he knew what this could mean. Arya ran a quick diagnostic. All systems green. The connection was stable. Latency minimal. The aircraft's onboard sensors were already feeding data to her system. Altitude, airspeed, engine performance, structural stress points. Thousands of data streams, all flowing into the algorithm she'd spent 5 years perfecting. The algorithm that could predict mechanical failures before they happened. That could analyze flight patterns and weather conditions and maintenance records, and 1,000 other variables to identify risks that human pilots and technicians would never spot. That could save lives. She'd built it after her uncle died. Uncle James. Pilot for 23 years. Flew regional routes, loved his job, loved the sky. Died when his plane went down over Arkansas, engine failure at 12,000 feet. 43 people killed. Investigation blamed faulty maintenance. A sensor that had been malfunctioning for weeks but kept getting cleared by technicians who swore it was fine. Until it wasn't. Arya had been 19, still in college, still figuring out who she wanted to be. James's death had focused her like nothing else. She'd switched her major to aeronautical engineering, had devoured everything she could find about predictive analytics, machine learning, failure patterns, had started building the algorithm in her dorm room, had refined it through grad school, had dropped out 3 months before her PhD defense because she knew that this was too important to wait. 5 years later, Nebula Dynamics had 12 employees, 3 patents, and a system that could have prevented her uncle's death, could prevent hundreds more, if she could just convince the right people to listen. The European Aviation Consortium represented 7 of the largest carriers in the world. If they adopted Nebula's system, if they integrated it into their fleets, their maintenance protocols, their safety procedures, it would change everything, force the industry to take notice, make predictive analytics the standard instead of the exception, save lives. So yeah, no pressure. Arya pulled up the presentation one more time, scrolling through the slides. Opening hook, a comparison of current failure detection rates versus Nebula's. Technical specs. Case studies. The simulation that demonstrated how the system would have flagged every major commercial aviation disaster in the past decade, from engine failures to structural fatigue to electrical malfunctions. All theoretical, of course. Until tonight. Tonight she'd run a live demo, show them the system working in real time, on this aircraft, during this flight. Show them not just what it could do, but what it was doing right now, analyzing every system, every sensor, every data point. And if everything went according to plan, she'd prove that Nebula wasn't just promising technology. It was necessary technology. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Marcus, it was Graham Sterling. The text was brief. Everything set on your end? Arya's heart rate kicked up. Graham didn't text unless it was important. He was old school, preferred phone calls, face-to-face meetings. A text meant he was checking in without wanting to interrupt. Meant he was thinking about this, about her, about what was riding on the next 12 hours. She typed back, "All systems go, just waiting for the right moment." The response was immediate. "You've got this. They don't know what's about to hit them." Arya smiled. Graham Sterling was a legend in aviation, had built Sterling Global Airlines from a regional carrier to an international powerhouse, had survived bankruptcies and buyouts, and a dozen near disasters. He'd met Arya at an industry conference 2 years ago, had listened to her pitch with skeptical interest, and then, to everyone's surprise, including hers, had invested. Not just money, time, connections, credibility. He'd introduced her to the consortium, had vouched for her, had staked his reputation on the idea that this young woman with a radical theory could deliver. She couldn't let him down. Wouldn't let him down. "Excuse me." Arya looked up. Marcus, the tall flight attendant from earlier, stood beside her seat. His expression was carefully neutral, but there was something in his eyes, concern, maybe, or caution. "Yes? I just wanted to check in," he said quietly. "Make sure you're comfortable, that you have everything you need." Arya studied him for a moment. He seemed genuine, but she'd learned to be wary of kindness that came after conflict. Sometimes it was real, sometimes it was just damage control. "I'm fine," she said. "Thank you." Marcus nodded, but he didn't move. "I also wanted to apologize for what happened during boarding. That shouldn't have happened, not on my flight." "My flight? Interesting. It's not your fault," Arya said. "Maybe not, but it's my job to make sure everyone feels safe and respected on this aircraft. And I don't think we did that for you today." The words hung in the air between them. Arya didn't know what to say, because he was right. She didn't feel safe, didn't feel respected, felt like she was sitting in enemy territory, waiting for the next attack. But what was she supposed to do? Accept the apology and move on? Pretend it was fine? "I appreciate you saying that," she said finally. "Really? But I just want to focus on my work now. Is that okay?" "Of course." Marcus hesitated. "If you need anything at all, please let me know. And if there are any further incidents, I want you to tell me immediately. Understood?" Arya nodded. Marcus gave her a small professional smile and moved away. She turned back to her laptop, but the words on the screen had lost all meaning. Her mind was spinning, caught between the presentation she needed to finalize and the anger still burning in her chest and the exhaustion that was starting to creep in at the edges. And then, from behind her, Vivian's voice again. Honestly, I think she must have complained or something. The way that flight attendant was just fawning over her, it's so obvious what's happening here. That was it. That was the moment something inside Arya snapped. She didn't think, didn't plan, just closed her laptop, unbuckled her seatbelt, and stood up. The cabin swayed slightly. They were still climbing, still finding their cruising altitude. She steadied herself against the seat and turned around. Vivian was in 2A, phone pressed to her ear, still talking. She didn't notice Arya at first, didn't see her standing there, perfectly still, perfectly calm. Didn't see the storm building behind her eyes. Yes, I'll definitely be filing a formal, excuse me. Vivian's head snapped up. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw Arya, but then her expression hardened. She held up one finger in a wait gesture, like Arya was a servant interrupting an important conversation. Arya didn't wait. Hang up the phone, she said quietly. Vivian's mouth fell open. What? Excuse me, I'm in the middle of... Hang up the phone. There was something in Arya's voice that made Vivian hesitate, made her actually lower the phone slightly, uncertainty flickering across her face. I'll call you back, she said into the phone, not breaking eye contact with Arya. She ended the call, set the phone in her lap, folded her hands. Can I help you? The last two words dripped with disdain. Arya took a breath. When she spoke, her voice was perfectly level, perfectly controlled. I want you to listen to me very carefully. I tried to let this go, tried to be the bigger person, tried to just focus on my work and ignore you, but you won't stop. You won't stop talking about me like I'm not sitting 10 feet away, like I can't hear every single word you're saying. Vivian's face flushed. I have every right to express my opinions about what? About me? About the fact that you think I don't belong here? Arya's voice dropped even lower. About your little theory that I only got this seat because of DEI policies or affirmative action or whatever racist excuse you're telling yourself? I never said, you didn't have to say it. We both know what you meant. Arya leaned forward slightly. So let me be very clear with you, Mrs. Caldwell. I earned this seat. I paid for this seat with money I made from a company I built from nothing. I don't owe you an explanation. I don't owe you my credentials. I don't owe you anything. But since you seem so convinced that I don't deserve to be here, let me tell you exactly who I am. Vivian's eyes narrowed. I don't care who. I'm the founder and CEO of Nebula Dynamics. We specialize in predictive aviation safety analytics. In about 6 hours, I'm going to close a $5 billion deal with the European Aviation Consortium that will fundamentally change how every major airline in the world approaches mechanical failure prevention. I hold 3 patents. I have contracts with 12 carriers. And the only reason I'm on this flight, the only reason I'm sitting in seat 1A instead of in a private jet, is because I need to demonstrate my system in real time, on a commercial aircraft, during actual flight conditions. She straightened up. Vivian was staring at her now, mouth slightly open, face pale. So yes, Mrs. Caldwell, I earned my seat, and no amount of frequent flyer miles or status or designer luggage will ever change the fact that you are exactly the kind of person my system is designed to protect, even though people like you spend your whole lives trying to make people like me feel like we don't deserve protection at all. The cabin had gone silent. Every passenger in first class was watching now. Pretense abandoned. This was better than any in-flight entertainment. Vivian's face went through several shades of red and white. Her hands trembled in her lap. When she finally spoke, her voice was shaking too, with rage or humiliation or both. How dare you speak to me that way? I dare because I'm done being polite to people who don't extend me the same courtesy. Arya's voice was ice. I'm done pretending that microaggressions are just misunderstandings. I'm done making myself smaller so that people like you can feel comfortable. And I'm done, absolutely done listening to you disparage me to whoever's on the other end of that phone. I have every right to... You have the right to sit in your assigned seat and keep your opinions to yourself. That's it. That's all you have. And if you continue to make this flight uncomfortable for me, if you say one more word about me, about my presence here, about anything, then I will make sure you understand exactly how much power a person can have when they stop caring about making other people comfortable. The threat hung in the air, unspecified but unmistakable. Vivian's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She looked around, as if appealing to the other passengers for support. No one met her eyes. Everyone suddenly found their phones or books or windows incredibly fascinating. You can't. I'm going to report you. To who? Arya asked calmly. The flight attendants who already told you to sit down and be quiet? The captain who threatened to remove you from the plane? Or maybe your lawyer, the one you keep threatening everyone with? Vivian's face crumpled. For a moment, she looked less like a woman in a $4,000 suit and more like a child who'd just been told no for the first time in her life. You have no idea who I am, she whispered. Arya smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. You're right, she said. I don't. And I don't care. Because whoever you are, whatever you think you are, it doesn't give you the right to treat people the way you treated me today. It doesn't give you the right to question my presence, my worth, my belonging. And it certainly doesn't give you the right to spend the next 7 hours making sure everyone on this plane knows exactly what you think of me. She took a step back. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit there quietly. You're going to keep your thoughts to yourself. And you're going to let me do my work in peace. Because if you don't, if I hear one more word, one more comment, one more phone call where you're talking about me like I'm some kind of problem that needs to be solved, then I promise you, Mrs. Caldwell, you will regret ever stepping foot on this aircraft. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Arya turned and walked back to seat 1A, sat down, buckled her seatbelt, opened her laptop. Her hands were shaking, her heart was pounding. Adrenaline coursed through her veins like electricity, but she felt better. God help her, she felt better. Behind her she heard nothing, no phone calls, no stage whispers, no commentary, just silence. Marcus appeared at her side almost immediately, concern etched across his face. Ms. Knox, everything's fine, Arya said without looking up. Just had a conversation that needed to happen. We're good now. Marcus hesitated. Are you sure? Because if you need me to, I'm sure. Thank you, Marcus. He nodded slowly and moved away. Arya could feel eyes on her, passengers stealing glances, trying to figure out what had just happened. Let them look. Let them wonder. She pulled up the presentation again, but the words still wouldn't focus. Her mind was racing, replaying the confrontation, analyzing every word, every reaction. Had she gone too far? Had she been too harsh? Should she have just stayed quiet, let Vivian exhaust herself, risen above it all? No, she was done rising above, done being the better person while people like Vivian Caldwell spent their lives making sure she knew she didn't belong, done swallowing her anger, her hurt, her rage, just so other people could stay comfortable. She'd meant every word she said. And if Vivian didn't like it, well, that was Vivian's problem. The flight continued. The hours ticked by. Around her, first class settled into its usual rhythm. Reading lights on, headphones in, the occasional murmur of conversation. Normal. Unremarkable. Except nothing about this felt normal. Arya tried to work, tried to focus, but exhaustion was catching up with her now, the adrenaline crash leaving her hollow and shaky. She closed her laptop, leaned back, closed her eyes. Just for a minute, just to breathe. Her phone buzzed. She ignored it, buzzed again, and again. With a sigh, she pulled it out. 3 texts from Marcus Chen. Did you just go off on that lady? Some guy in 2C just posted about it on Twitter. You're going viral. Also, I love you, and you're my hero. Arya's eyes widened. She opened Twitter, and sure enough, there it was. A thread from someone named @BusinessTraveler47. Holy shit, you guys. I'm on a flight to London, and I just witnessed the most insane first-class confrontation. This woman has been complaining for an hour about another passenger, and the other passenger just stood up and destroyed her. Full thread incoming. Arya scrolled down, kept scrolling. The thread had 40 tweets, screenshots of Vivian's incredulous face, Photos of Arya walking back to her seat. Quote tweets with fire emojis and crown emojis and comments like drag her and this is what we need more of and I would pay money to have seen this in person. She was trending. Actually trending. Past Seatgate was the #3 topic in the United States. Arya closed Twitter, put her phone face down on the seat, stared at the ceiling. Well, she muttered to herself, that's new. This was going to be interesting. The viral thread kept growing. Arya watched the numbers climb with a mixture of horror and fascination. Retweets multiplying, comments flooding in, strangers dissecting every detail of a confrontation they'd only witnessed through someone else's breathless play-by-play. Within 20 minutes, she had 17 new follower requests on her personal Instagram, 12 on LinkedIn, and a notification from Nebula's PR director that simply read, "Call me now." She didn't call. Instead, she put her phone on airplane mode, shoved it deep into her backpack, and tried to pretend the last hour hadn't happened. Tried to focus on the work that actually mattered, the presentation, the demo, the $5 billion hanging in the balance. But her hands were still shaking. The businessman in 1B stirred, glanced over at her, then quickly looked away. Everyone in first class was being very careful not to make eye contact now, like she was radioactive, dangerous, unpredictable. Good. Let them be uncomfortable for once. Arya opened her laptop and forced herself to focus. The presentation slides appeared on the screen, familiar and solid. She'd reviewed them 100 times, could recite every word from memory. But now, with hours still to go before the demo, they felt inadequate, like no amount of preparation could possibly be enough. She pulled up the diagnostic panel instead. The real-time feed from the aircraft's systems scrolled across her screen. Engine temperature, fuel consumption, hydraulic pressure, electrical load distribution. Thousands of data points, all flowing into Nebula's algorithm, all being analyzed, cross-referenced, predicted. Everything looked normal, optimal even. This was a well-maintained 787, relatively new, with an excellent service record. The kind of plane that should give her system absolutely nothing interesting to report, which was fine. The demo didn't require a crisis. It just required proof that the system worked, that it could monitor, predict, and alert in real time, that it could do what human oversight alone could never do, see patterns across millions of variables simultaneously. Arya watched the data flow, let herself get lost in the numbers. This was where she felt safe, where everything made sense. Code didn't care what she looked like. Algorithms didn't make assumptions. Mathematics was pure, objective, beautiful in its clarity. Unlike people, unlike Vivian Caldwell, who decided Arya's worth based on a hoodie and the color of her skin. The thought brought the anger back, hot and sharp. Arya closed her eyes, counted to 10 again. Breathe. Focus. Let it go. Her phone buzzed against her leg, still getting notifications even in airplane mode, probably texts coming through the aircraft's Wi-Fi. She ignored it. "Ms. Knox?" She looked up. Diane stood beside her seat, holding a covered tray. "I thought you might be hungry," the flight attendant said gently. "You didn't want anything earlier, but it's been a few hours, and I know you're working hard. I brought you the short rib. It really is excellent." Arya started to refuse automatically, then stopped. When had she last eaten? Breakfast, maybe? Her stomach was a tight knot of anxiety, but Diane was right. She needed fuel, needed to keep her strength up. "Thank you," she said quietly. Diane set the tray down, and for a moment Arya thought she'd leave it at that. But instead, the older woman hesitated, then leaned in slightly. "I want you to know," Diane said, her voice low enough that only Arya could hear, "what you did back there. Standing up for yourself. That took courage, real courage. And I'm sorry, truly sorry, that you had to do it at all." The words hit harder than Arya expected. Her throat tightened. "It shouldn't have to take courage," she managed. "It should just be normal, expecting basic respect." "You're right, it should be." Diane's eyes were kind but sad, like she'd seen this story play out too many times before. "But until the world catches up, I'm glad there are people like you who won't stay silent, who won't make it easy for people like her." She straightened up, professional mask sliding back into place. "Enjoy your meal." Arya watched her walk away, then looked down at the tray. The short rib did look excellent, perfectly braised, accompanied by roasted vegetables and creamy polenta. The kind of meal that cost extra, even in first class, the kind that said someone had gone out of their way. She picked up her fork and took a bite. It was delicious. She ate slowly, mechanically, her mind elsewhere. The cabin around her had settled into the quiet rhythm of long-haul flight, reading lights creating small pools of brightness in the dimmed space, the steady hum of engines, occasional movements as passengers shifted or got up to use the restroom. Behind her, Vivian's seat was silent. No phone calls, no complaints, just silence. Arya didn't trust it. She finished half the meal before her stomach protested, set the fork down, pushed the tray aside. Checked the time. 4 hours down, 3 to go. Still too early for the demo, she needed the consortium members awake and alert in London, which meant waiting until they were closer to landing. Until then, she had nothing to do but wait. And think. And replay every moment of the confrontation in her head. Had she really threatened Vivian? What had she even meant by that? You will regret ever stepping foot on this aircraft. It had sounded good in the moment, powerful and final, but now it felt hollow. Empty. What was she going to do, really? She wasn't vindictive, wasn't the kind of person who destroyed others for sport, but she had connections, resources. Graham Sterling's direct line in her phone. The thought stopped her cold. Graham. She could call him right now, could tell him what happened, could, what, ask him to do something? He was the chairman of Sterling Global's parent company, had relationships with every major carrier, including this one. One call from him and Vivian Caldwell's executive platinum status would vanish. Her lifetime miles, her upgrades, her precious seat privileges, gone. Arya's finger hovered over her phone. She could do it. Could make Vivian understand exactly what it felt like to have your status questioned, your worth dismissed, your presence treated as conditional. But that would make her just like Vivian, wouldn't it? She pulled her hand back, clenched it into a fist. No, she was better than that, had to be better than that. Revenge didn't change anything, didn't fix the broken system that had created this situation in the first place, didn't address the casual racism, the entitled assumptions, the structural inequalities that meant people like her had to fight twice as hard for half the recognition. Destroying Vivian Caldwell wouldn't solve any of that. But God, it would feel good. Excuse me, Arya's head snapped up. A woman stood in the aisle beside her seat, older, 60-something, with silver hair and warm brown eyes. She wore a simple cardigan over slacks, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. I'm so sorry to interrupt, the woman said. I'm in 4C and I wanted to tell you that what you did earlier was extraordinary. I've been flying for 40 years, and I've seen too many situations like that end with the wrong person apologizing. So thank you for not apologizing, for standing your ground. Arya blinked, caught off guard. Thank you. I appreciate that. The woman smiled. My daughter is about your age. She's a doctor, emergency medicine, and she has to deal with patients who refuse to believe she's qualified, who ask for a real doctor, who assume she's a nurse. She never says anything, just smiles and moves on, and it breaks my heart every time. Her eyes glistened. So seeing you refuse to shrink yourself, refuse to make yourself smaller, it gave me hope that maybe the next generation won't have to swallow quite so much. Arya's throat tightened again. She didn't know what to say, didn't trust herself to speak without her voice breaking. The woman reached out, squeezed her shoulder gently. You keep fighting. The world needs people like you. Then she was gone, walking back to her seat, leaving Arya staring after her with tears burning behind her eyes. She wiped them away quickly, turned back to her laptop, focused on the screen, on the numbers, on anything except the sudden overwhelming emotion threatening to spill over. The next 2 hours passed in a blur. Arya worked on the presentation, fine-tuning transitions, double-checking calculations. Around her, the cabin grew quieter as more passengers dozed off, wrapped in airline blankets, reclined seats creating a landscape of sleeping forms. She should sleep too, knew she'd need to be sharp for the demo, but every time she closed her eyes, her mind raced, replayed the confrontation, imagined a dozen different ways it could have gone. Better responses, worse outcomes. The endless loop of what-ifs that came after any moment of conflict. At some point, Marcus appeared with a warm towel and fresh water. He didn't say anything, just gave her a small nod of solidarity before moving on. The gesture steadied her somehow, reminded her she wasn't alone in this. Her phone buzzed again. She'd turned it back on, needed the connectivity for the demo preparation, and now the messages were flooding in. Marcus Chen with updates from the office. Her PR director with a crisis management plan that Arya immediately ignored. 3 voicemail notifications from her mother, who'd apparently seen the viral thread and had opinions. And 1 text from Graham Sterling that made her breath catch. Heard about the incident. Call me when you can. Want to make sure you're all right. Arya stared at the message. Graham knew. Of course he knew. The man had his finger on the pulse of everything aviation-related, and a viral confrontation on a transatlantic flight definitely qualified. She could call him, should call him. But what would she say? She typed back, "I'm fine. Just ready to make this demo count." The response came within seconds. "That's my girl. But seriously, if you need anything, I'm 1 call away." And Arya? Don't let anyone make you question your right to be in that seat, or any other seat. You've earned every single thing you have. The tears threatened again. Arya blinked them back, typed a quick thank you, and put the phone away before she could see his response. She pulled up the demo sequence instead, running through it 1 more time. The consortium members would be on a conference call at 6 a.m. London time, in about 40 minutes. The plan was simple. Arya would connect them to the live feed, show them the aircraft's real-time data flowing through Nebula's system, and demonstrate how the algorithm could predict potential issues before they became critical. Nothing was going to go wrong on this flight. The aircraft was too well maintained, too new. But that was fine. The demo was about capability, not drama. About proving the system worked as advertised. At least, that was the plan. Arya checked the diagnostic panel again. Everything still optimal. Engine temperature steady. Fuel consumption normal. Hydraulic pressure well within parameters. Except. She frowned, leaned closer to the screen. There was something off about the starboard engine's vibration signature. Nothing dramatic, just a slight variation from the baseline, a wobble in the data that shouldn't be there. The kind of thing that human monitoring would dismiss as instrument noise. Statistical variation, normal operational fluctuation. But Nebula's algorithm didn't dismiss anything. Arya pulled up the detailed analysis. The system was flagging a developing resonance pattern in the engine's high-pressure turbine. Not critical. Not even concerning yet. But trending in a direction that, if left unchecked, could lead to increased wear, reduced efficiency, and eventually, months down the line, potential failure. Her heart rate kicked up. This was exactly what the system was designed to catch. The kind of subtle pattern that human analysis would miss until it became a problem. The kind of early warning that could prevent a catastrophic failure. She ran the projection forward. The algorithm predicted that at current trends, the engine would need unscheduled maintenance within 6 weeks. Nothing urgent, nothing that would affect this flight or the next 100 flights, but something that should be addressed proactively. Perfect. This was better than perfect. This was a real-world demonstration of the system's capability, happening in real time, on an actual flight. Not a simulation, not a theoretical model. The real thing. Arya pulled up her secure messaging app and sent a quick alert to the airline's maintenance operations center, flagged the engine for inspection, included the full diagnostic data, marked it non-urgent but recommended follow-up. The response came back almost immediately. Received. Will add to next scheduled maintenance window. Thanks for the heads up. Standard protocol. Routine. Exactly how it should work. Arya sat back, adrenaline singing through her veins. This was why she'd built Nebula, this exact moment. The ability to catch problems before they became disasters, to save lives through prediction instead of reaction. And now she had a live example to show the consortium. She glanced at the time. 30 minutes until the call. She should prepare, make sure everything was ready. But for a moment, she just let herself feel the satisfaction, the vindication. She'd built something that worked, something that mattered, something that was going to change everything. Behind her, she heard movement, a seat creaking, the rustle of someone stirring. Then Vivian's voice, sharp and cutting through the quiet cabin. "I need to speak to the captain. Now." Arya's satisfaction evaporated instantly. Marcus appeared from the galley, his expression already shifting into professional concern. Is everything all right, ma'am? No, everything is not all right. Vivian's voice was high, tight, panicked. I just overheard that woman, she must have gestured toward Arya, talking about an engine problem, about maintenance, about something being wrong with this plane. The cabin went very still. Arya's stomach dropped. Oh no. Ma'am, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding, Marcus began. There's no misunderstanding. I heard her. She was talking about engine vibrations and failures and… Vivian's voice climbed higher. We're over the Atlantic. If there's something wrong with the engines, I have a right to know. Other passengers were waking now, heads turning, concern rippling through the cabin. Arya closed her laptop slowly, turned around. Vivian was standing in the aisle, face flushed, eyes wild. She looked genuinely frightened. Mrs. Caldwell, Arya said carefully, there's nothing wrong with the plane. I was just… Don't you dare tell me there's nothing wrong! Vivian's voice was shaking now. I heard you. You sent a message about the engine, about maintenance, about… It's a routine monitoring alert, Arya cut in, keeping her voice calm. The kind of thing that happens on every flight. There's no danger, no immediate concern. Just a minor variation that should be checked during normal maintenance. A variation? Vivian looked around at the other passengers, appealing to them. Did you hear that? There's a variation in the engine, and she's sitting here acting like it's normal. Because it is normal, Arya said, patience wearing thin. Commercial aircraft have redundant systems specifically for… I want to speak to the captain! Vivian was nearly shouting now. I want him to explain to me why we're flying over the ocean with a malfunctioning engine. Ma'am, please lower your voice, Marcus tried. I will not lower my voice. My safety is being compromised because this girl is playing around with flight systems, sending alerts about engine problems, and no one is taking it seriously. The cabin was fully awake now. Every passenger watching, some looking concerned, others annoyed. A few pulling out phones, probably hoping this would be Seatgate Part 2. Arya stood up, faced Vivian directly. The engine is not malfunctioning, she said, her voice cutting through the panic. I monitor aviation systems for a living. What I detected was a minor anomaly that the aircraft's own sensors haven't flagged yet because it's so subtle. I reported it as a precaution. That's it, that's all. We are in absolutely no danger. How can you possibly know that? Vivian shot back. You're not a pilot. You're not an engineer. You're just some… Actually, a new voice interrupted. She's both. Everyone turned. Captain Morrison stood in the aisle, having emerged from the cockpit. His expression was calm but firm. Ms. Knox is correct, he continued. I've reviewed the alert she sent to maintenance. It's a minor variation in the starboard engine's vibration pattern. So minor that our onboard systems haven't flagged it because it's well within normal operational parameters. She reported it out of an abundance of caution, which is exactly what she should have done. There is no danger to this aircraft or its passengers. Vivian stared at him. But she said exactly what I just confirmed. Morrison's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. And frankly, Mrs. Caldwell, I'm more concerned about the panic you're trying to create than I am about any engine variation. So I'm going to need you to sit down, calm down, and let us do our jobs. I have every right to be concerned about my safety. You have the right to follow crew instructions, Morrison cut in, which means sitting down. Now. The captain's tone left no room for argument. Vivian's mouth opened and closed. She looked around again, searching for support, for someone to back her up. No one did. Fine, she spat. She dropped back into her seat, arms crossed, trembling with rage or fear or both. Morrison turned to Arya. Ms. Knox, could you join me in the galley for a moment? It wasn't a request. Arya followed him forward, heart pounding. Had she messed up? Violated some protocol? She'd followed the proper channels, sent the alert through official systems, but maybe… Relax, Morrison said quietly, once they were out of earshot. You're not in trouble. I just wanted to thank you. Arya blinked. Thank me? That alert you sent was good work. Subtle catch. Our systems probably wouldn't have flagged it for another week or two, by which point it would have been more of an issue. He smiled slightly. You probably just saved the airline a few $100,000 in unscheduled downtime. The relief was almost physical. I was just doing what the system is designed for. I know, and that's exactly why Graham's been pushing the consortium to adopt it. Morrison's expression turned serious. But I also know about the earlier incident with Mrs. Caldwell, and I want you to know that I've filed a report. She won't be flying with us again. Arya's breath caught. You're banning her? I'm recommending she be banned, yes. That kind of behavior, the racism, the disruption, the panic-mongering just now, it's unacceptable. We have a zero-tolerance policy for passengers who create unsafe situations, and she's crossed that line multiple times tonight. I didn't ask you to, You didn't have to ask. Morrison's voice was firm. This isn't about revenge, Ms. Knox. It's about safety and standards. Vivian Caldwell has demonstrated that she's willing to prioritize her personal grievances over the well-being of other passengers and crew. That makes her a liability. Arya didn't know what to say. Part of her felt vindicated. Part of her felt guilty for feeling vindicated. And part of her was just exhausted. Thank you, she said finally, for taking it seriously. Morrison nodded. Go back to your seat. Finish whatever work you're doing. And for what it's worth, I'm looking forward to seeing what that system of yours can do. He returned to the cockpit. Arya walked back to 1A, acutely aware of every eye following her. She sat down, buckled in, opened her laptop. Her hands were steady now. The time display showed 15 minutes until the consortium call. Perfect timing. Behind her, Vivian sat in silence. But it was a different kind of silence now. Not the silence of someone gathering ammunition. The silence of someone who'd finally realized they'd lost. Arya pulled up the demo presentation and allowed herself a small smile. Showtime. The conference call connected at exactly 6 a.m. London time. Arya had her headphones in, laptop screen split between the video feed and the live diagnostic panel. 7 faces appeared in neat rectangles. The CEOs and chief technology officers of Europe's largest carriers, all looking various degrees of alert despite the early hour. And there, in the center square, was Graham Sterling. Silver hair impeccable even at dawn, blue eyes sharp and assessing. He gave her the slightest nod. Good morning, gentlemen, Arya began, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Thank you for making time for this demonstration. I know 6 a.m. is early, but I promise what you're about to see is worth losing a little sleep over. A few polite chuckles. The CEO of Nordic Air, Anders Johansson, mid-50s, notoriously skeptical of new technology, leaned forward slightly. Ms. Knox, we've reviewed your preliminary data. Impressive work, but we need to see this system perform in real-world conditions, not laboratory simulations. That's why we're here. I understand completely, Arya said, which is why I'm not going to show you simulations. I'm going to show you the real thing happening right now on the aircraft I'm currently aboard. She switched the screen share to the diagnostic panel. The data streams appeared, flowing in real time: engine parameters, structural stress indicators, electrical system loads, hydraulic pressures, thousands of variables, all being monitored simultaneously. What you're seeing is live telemetry from a 787-9 currently over the mid-Atlantic, cruising at 39,000 feet. Nebula's algorithm is processing approximately 15,000 data points per second from this aircraft's onboard sensors, cross-referencing them against historical patterns, manufacturer specifications, and our proprietary failure prediction models. The executives leaned closer to their screens. Even Johansson looked intrigued. Arya continued, the system doesn't just monitor, it predicts. It identifies patterns that human analysis would miss, subtle variations that indicate potential problems long before they become critical. For example, she highlighted the starboard engine data. About 90 minutes ago, the algorithm detected an anomaly in the high-pressure turbine's vibration signature. Nothing the aircraft's own warning systems flagged. Nothing that would concern a pilot during normal monitoring, but the pattern indicated a developing resonance that, left unchecked, would lead to accelerated wear and potential failure. Potential failure? The Air France CTO, Marie Dubois, looked alarmed. You're on a plane with a failing engine? No, Arya said firmly. I'm on a plane with an engine that will need maintenance in approximately 6 weeks. That's the difference. The aircraft's systems would have caught this eventually, probably in 2 to 3 weeks when the variation became more pronounced. By then, the airline would be looking at unscheduled maintenance, possible flight cancellations, significant costs. With Nebula's early detection, they can schedule the work proactively during routine maintenance windows. She pulled up the projection model. Here's what the algorithm predicts. At current trends, efficiency loss of 0.3% within 2 weeks, 0.8% within 4 weeks, and component stress levels reaching maintenance thresholds at week 6. No immediate danger, no emergency, just advance warning that allows for proper planning and resource allocation. Graham Sterling spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the weight of decades in the industry. The question, gentlemen, isn't whether this technology is impressive. It clearly is. The question is whether it's reliable enough to stake our operations on. He looked directly at Arya through the screen. So let me ask you this, Ms. Knox. How many false positives does your system generate? This was the critical question, the one that could make or break the entire deal. Airlines couldn't afford to ground aircraft based on algorithmic paranoia, couldn't waste millions chasing phantom problems. Arya had known this was coming. In our 18 months of beta testing across 12 carriers, she said, Nebula has generated 47 maintenance alerts. Of those, 43 were confirmed as legitimate issues requiring attention. 3 were borderline cases where the component was within acceptable parameters but showing early wear patterns. 1 was a false positive caused by a sensor calibration error. She paused. Let that sink in. That's a 91% confirmation rate for genuine issues and a 98% rate when including borderline cases. The single false positive was traced back to faulty input data, not algorithmic error. We've since implemented additional validation protocols to prevent that scenario. The executives exchanged glances. Those were extraordinary numbers. Game-changing numbers. Johansson cleared his throat. And what about the 4 issues that were flagged but not addressed? What happened with those? Arya pulled up the case files. 3 of the 4 aircraft experienced the predicted failures within the projected time frame, all during scheduled maintenance when components were being serviced anyway, so no operational impact. The 4th was retired from service before the predicted failure window, so we never got confirmation, but the pattern analysis strongly suggested the alert was valid. So you're telling us, Marie Dubois said slowly, that your system would have predicted every major commercial aviation disaster in the past decade. Not every disaster, Arya corrected. Nebula focuses on mechanical and structural failures. We can't predict pilot error, weather events, or external factors like bird strikes. But for the types of failures that stem from component wear, manufacturing defects, or maintenance oversights, yes. The algorithm would have flagged every single one of them with enough advance warning to prevent catastrophic failure. The screen was silent for a long moment. Then the Lufthansa CEO, Klaus Weber, spoke up. I have a question about implementation costs. Your preliminary proposal showed significant infrastructure requirements. Actually, Arya interrupted, we've revised that. The original proposal assumed dedicated server installations at each carrier's operations center, but we've since developed a cloud-based deployment model that reduces upfront costs by 60% and allows for faster scaling. She walked them through the updated implementation plan, fielding questions about data security, processing speeds, integration with existing maintenance systems. These were airline executives. They weren't impressed by flashy technology. They wanted to know about operational efficiency, cost-benefit ratios, risk mitigation. Arya gave them numbers, real numbers. Projected savings based on reduced unscheduled maintenance, fewer flight cancellations, optimized component life cycles. The math was compelling, undeniable. Graham Sterling watched her with something like pride in his eyes. 30 minutes into the call, Anders Johansson held up a hand. Ms. Knox, I think I speak for all of us when I say this demonstration has exceeded our expectations. But I have one final question. Here it comes, Arya thought. The curveball. There was always a curveball. Your company is relatively small, Johansson continued. 12 employees, you said? What happens if Nebula Dynamics gets acquired by a larger tech firm, or if you decide to sell the patents? We'd be integrating this system into our core operations. We need assurance that it won't disappear or become prohibitively expensive down the line. It was a fair concern, a smart concern. The kind of question that separated serious executives from careless ones. Arya took a breath. That's why the contract includes a 10-year technology license with guaranteed pricing and a poison pill clause. If Nebula is acquired or if there's any change in ownership structure that affects service delivery, you have the option to either purchase the technology outright at a predetermined price or receive a full refund of all implementation costs plus damages. Your operations will never be held hostage to corporate maneuvering. Johansson's eyebrows rose. That's a significant commitment on your part. It's a significant commitment on yours, Arya countered. You're trusting your aircraft, your passengers, and your reputation to this system. The least I can do is ensure that trust isn't misplaced. Graham Sterling smiled. Not his professional smile, his real one, the one that meant he was genuinely pleased. Gentlemen, he said, I think we've seen enough. Miss Knox, would you mind giving us a few minutes to confer privately? Of course. Arya muted her audio and video, but kept the diagnostic panel visible on their end. Let them watch the system work while they discussed. She pulled off her headphones, leaned back in her seat. Her heart was racing. That had gone well, better than well. They were interested, really interested. She could see it in their faces, hear it in their questions. This wasn't polite consideration. This was serious negotiation. The cabin around her was quiet. Most passengers still asleep or lost in their own activities. The sky outside the window was beginning to lighten, that strange pre-dawn glow that came over the Atlantic, neither night nor day. Behind her, Vivian's seat remained silent. No movement, no commentary. Just the absence of the woman who'd spent the first half of the flight trying to make Arya feel small. Arya checked her phone. Messages from Marcus Chen, from her PR director, from her mother. She'd deal with all of that later. Right now, she needed to stay focused. The video call reactivated. All 7 executives were back, their expressions carefully neutral in that way that meant they'd reached a decision. Graham Sterling spoke first. Ms. Knox, we've discussed your proposal. The technology is sound, the implementation plan is feasible, and the cost-benefit analysis is compelling. We have some concerns about scalability and long-term support, but those can be addressed in the contract negotiations. Arya's pulse quickened. That sounded like a yes. That sounded like, therefore, Sterling continued, the European Aviation Consortium is prepared to move forward with full implementation across all 7 carrier fleets, subject to final contract terms, and a 90-day pilot program with Lufthansa to validate operational integration. The words hit like a physical force. Arya's breath caught. They said yes. They actually said yes. The total contract value, Sterling went on, will be $5.2 billion over 7 years, with an option to extend for an additional 5 years at renegotiated rates. We'll need your legal team to coordinate with ours on the formal agreements, but consider this a verbal commitment pending documentation. Arya couldn't speak, literally couldn't form words. $5.2 billion, 7 carriers, complete industry adoption, everything she'd worked for, everything she'd sacrificed, every doubt, every setback, every person who'd told her she was too young, too inexperienced, too ambitious, all of it vindicated in a single moment. Ms. Knox, Graham's voice was gentle. Are you still with us? She found her voice. Yes, I'm here. Thank you. All of you. You won't regret this. I promise you won't regret this. We know, Marie Dubois said, smiling. That's why we're doing it. The call ended with pleasantries and promises to connect later in the week. Arya closed her laptop with trembling hands, sat there in seat 1A, 39,000 feet over the Atlantic, and tried to process what had just happened. She'd done it, actually done it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Graham. Congratulations, you just changed the industry. Enjoy the moment, you earned it. Another from Marcus Chen. Tell me everything. Arya laughed, a short, breathless sound that was half disbelief, half pure joy. She wanted to scream, wanted to stand up and tell everyone in the cabin what had just happened. Wanted to call her mother, her team, everyone who'd believed in her when belief was all they had to offer. Instead, she just sat there, grinning like an idiot, tears streaming down her face. Miss Knox? She looked up. Diane stood beside her seat, concern in her eyes. "Are you all right, dear?" Arya wiped her face, still grinning. "I'm perfect. I just closed the biggest deal of my life." Diane's expression transformed into pure delight. "Oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations." "Thank you." Arya couldn't stop smiling. "Thank you." Diane squeezed her shoulder and moved on. Arya turned back to the window, watching the dawn spread across the horizon. Pink and gold and impossibly beautiful. She'd won. Not just the deal, not just the contract. She'd won the right to be here, the right to take up space, the right to exist in rooms or seats where people like Vivian Caldwell thought she didn't belong. And she'd done it without compromising, without shrinking, without apologizing for who she was or what she'd built. The vindication was sweeter than any revenge could have been. Behind her, she heard movement, the rustle of someone unbuckling their seatbelt, footsteps in the aisle, then Vivian's voice, tight and controlled. "I need to use the restroom." Arya didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge her, just kept staring out at the dawn, at the future spreading out before her like that endless sky. Vivian passed by, and for just a moment, their eyes met. Arya saw it all in that glance. The defeat, the humiliation, the dawning realization that she'd spent hours harassing someone who was operating on a level she couldn't even comprehend. That her precious status, her frequent flyer miles, her designer clothes and executive platinum card, none of it mattered. None of it gave her the right to treat people the way she'd treated Arya. Arya held her gaze for exactly 3 seconds. Didn't smile, didn't gloat, just looked at her with the calm, steady confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was worth. Then she turned back to the window. Vivian continued to the restroom without another word. The flight attendants began moving through the cabin, preparing for the breakfast service. The cabin lights came up slightly. Passengers stirred, stretched, started their morning routines. Marcus appeared at Arya's seat with a fresh cup of coffee, made exactly the way she liked it somehow. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "I don't know what you just accomplished, but I can see it on your face." "Well done." "Thank you, Marcus. For everything. You made this flight bearable." "Just doing my job." He hesitated. "And for what it's worth, I'm sorry about how it started. No one should have to fight for basic respect." "No," Arya agreed. "They shouldn't, but I'm glad I did. I'm glad I didn't back down." Marcus nodded and moved on. Arya sipped her coffee, opened her laptop one more time. The diagnostic panel still showed the aircraft systems humming along perfectly. The starboard engine vibration still present, still within normal parameters, still flagged for future maintenance. The system had worked exactly as designed, had proven itself on the biggest stage possible. She drafted a quick email to her team. "Deal closed. $5.2 billion. Full implementation across 7 carriers. You're all getting bonuses and raises, and probably some very expensive champagne. Details when I land." "Well done, everyone. We did it." The responses started coming in immediately. Exclamation points and celebration emojis and all-caps messages of disbelief and joy. Her team, her people, the ones who'd believed in this vision when it was nothing but code and dreams, they deserved this win as much as she did. Arya closed the email, pulled up a blank document, started drafting the press release. Nebula Dynamics would need to go public with this, carefully, strategically, but soon. The industry would want to know. Investors would want in. Competitors would scramble to catch up. Everything was about to change. The breakfast cart arrived. Arya accepted a warm croissant and fresh fruit, ate mechanically while her mind spun with plans and possibilities. Expansion. Hiring. New patents. Maybe even branching into other industries, shipping, rail, infrastructure monitoring. The applications were endless. An hour before landing, Captain Morrison's voice came over the speakers again. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our initial descent into London Heathrow. Current conditions are clear, temperature is 4 degrees Celsius, and we're expecting an on-time arrival. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin for landing." Arya packed away her laptop, organized her belongings. Around her, passengers were doing the same, gathering trash, folding blankets, checking phones for messages from people waiting on the ground. Normal end-of-flight routines. Except nothing about this flight had been normal. She glanced back one more time. Vivian was in her seat, staring straight ahead, face carefully blank. Her expensive luggage was already gathered. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, but there was something broken in her posture, something defeated in the set of her shoulders. Arya felt a moment of pity, almost. Then she remembered the contempt in Vivian's voice, the casual cruelty, the assumption that Arya was less than, and the pity evaporated. Some people needed to learn that actions had consequences, that the world didn't revolve around their comfort and convenience, that treating people with basic human dignity wasn't optional. Vivian Caldwell had learned that lesson today, the hard way. The plane descended through clouds, and suddenly London appeared below, ancient and modern all at once, the Thames snaking through the city like a silver ribbon. Heathrow's runways came into view, and then they were gliding down, smooth and controlled, wheels touching pavement with barely a bump. They'd landed. The cabin erupted in scattered applause, that strange phenomenon that happens sometimes on international flights, passengers celebrating the simple act of arrival. Arya joined in, clapping with genuine appreciation. This crew had handled an impossible situation with professionalism and grace. They deserved recognition. The plane taxied to the gate. Seatbelt signs dinged off. Passengers stood, pulling down luggage, crowding the aisles with the particular impatience of people who'd been confined for too long. Arya waited, let the rush happen around her. She had nowhere urgent to be. Her hotel was booked, her schedule clear until the afternoon meeting with Graham Sterling's team. She could afford to be patient. Finally, the crowd thinned enough to move. She gathered her backpack, slung it over her shoulder, and stepped into the aisle. Vivian was 2 rows back, struggling with her designer luggage. For a moment, their eyes met again. Arya saw the question there, the uncertainty, maybe even the beginning of understanding. She didn't wait for Vivian to speak, just turned and walked toward the exit. As she passed the cockpit, Captain Morrison stepped out. He extended his hand. "Ms. Knox, safe travels, and thank you again for that engine alert." Arya shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for taking it seriously, and for handling the situation with Mrs. Caldwell." Morrison's expression hardened slightly. "That's been documented and forwarded to corporate. She won't be causing problems on future flights." "I appreciate that." "We appreciate you," he smiled. "And between you and me, I'm looking forward to seeing your system on all our aircraft. Graham's been talking about it for months. After today, I understand why." Arya felt warmth spread through her chest, validation from the people who mattered, who understood the work, who saw the value. "That means more than you know, Captain." She continued down the jetway into Heathrow's gleaming terminal. The airport was busy, early morning rush, passengers streaming in every direction. She followed the signs toward customs, joining the queue of bleary-eyed travelers. Her phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number. She opened it cautiously. "Miss Knox, this is Rebecca Thornton, VP of Communications for the Consortium. Graham asked me to reach out. We'd like to schedule a press conference for Friday to announce the partnership. Would you be available? Also, congratulations, this is extraordinary work." Arya stared at the message. A press conference. Public announcement. Official recognition that she'd just landed the biggest aviation safety contract in history. She typed back, "Friday works. Send me the details. And thank you." Another message, this one from her PR director. "The viral video is at 15 million views. CNN wants an interview. So does BBC. And about 20 other outlets. How do you want to handle this?" 15 million views. Arya almost laughed. She'd gone viral twice in 12 hours. Once for standing up to a racist bully, once for closing a $5 billion deal. Not a bad day's work. She cleared customs, collected her baggage, and emerged into the arrivals hall. London morning light streamed through the glass walls. People everywhere, greeting loved ones, hailing taxis, starting their days. And there, standing by the exit with a handmade sign that read, "Arya Knox, Industry Game Changer," was Graham Sterling himself. He was grinning. Arya walked over, shaking her head in disbelief. "You didn't have to come all the way to the airport." "Are you kidding? I've been waiting for this moment for 2 years." Graham pulled her into a quick hug, professional but warm. "You did it, Arya. You actually did it. I knew you would. But seeing it happen, watching you handle those executives, demonstrate the system in real time, that was masterful. I had a good teacher, Arya said. You had good instincts. I just helped you refine them. He took her bag despite her protests. Come on, I've got a car waiting. We're having breakfast at Claridge's, and then we're going to spend the entire day planning how to scale Nebula from a scrappy startup to an industry standard. Sound good? Sounds perfect. They walked toward the exit together. Behind them, somewhere in the crowd of arriving passengers, Vivian Caldwell was probably dealing with luggage and customs and the reality of what she'd lost. Arya didn't look back. She'd already spent enough energy on people who didn't deserve it. Now it was time to focus on the future she'd just secured, the lives she'd save, the industry she'd transform, the world she was about to change. Graham's car was waiting, sleek black sedan, driver holding the door open. They climbed in, and as London traffic enveloped them, Arya finally let herself fully believe it. She'd won. Not just the deal. Everything. The breakfast at Claridge's was everything Graham had promised. Elegant dining room with cream walls and crystal chandeliers, perfectly poached eggs, and fresh squeezed orange juice. The kind of quiet luxury that whispered old money and established power. But Arya barely tasted any of it. Her mind was already 3 steps ahead, calculating implementation timelines and resource allocation and the 1,000 details that would transform a verbal commitment into operational reality. Graham watched her with amusement over his coffee cup. You know, most people would take at least a few hours to celebrate before diving into logistics. Most people didn't just stake their entire company's future on one phone call at 39,000 feet, Arya countered, finally looking up from the notes she'd been scribbling on her napkin. I need to call Marcus and the team, get them started on the pilot program specs. Lufthansa will want detailed integration plans within the week, and we'll need to hire at least 15 people immediately just to handle the workload. Arya. Graham's voice was gentle but firm. Breathe. She stopped, took a breath, realized her hands were shaking slightly, not from nerves now, but from adrenaline still coursing through her system, from the sheer magnitude of what had just happened. Sorry, she said. This is huge, like potentially company destroying if we mess it up huge. It is, Graham agreed, which is exactly why you need to pace yourself. You've been running on fumes and determination for months. I've watched you push through every obstacle, every doubt, every person who told you this was impossible. And you've won, spectacularly. But if you burn yourself out before implementation even begins, none of it will matter. He leaned forward, his expression serious. I've seen brilliant people destroy themselves trying to prove they could handle success. Don't be one of them. You've got a team. Use them. Trust them. That's what they're there for. The words settled over Arya like a blanket. He was right. She knew he was right, but letting go of control felt dangerous, like stepping off solid ground into empty air. I've never managed something this big, she admitted quietly. Nebula's always been small enough that I could keep track of everything myself. But this, 7 carriers, billions of dollars, thousands of aircraft, I can't do it alone. No, you can't, Graham said, which is why the first thing we're doing today is connecting you with people who can help. I've already reached out to 3 scaling consultants who specialize in tech companies going through rapid growth. They'll help you build the infrastructure you need, hiring, operations, financial management, all of it. You focus on the technology and the vision. Let experts handle the rest. Relief washed over her. Thank you. Seriously, I don't know what I would have done without you. You'd have figured it out, Graham said with certainty. You always do, but there's no shame in accepting help when it's offered. That's not weakness, it's intelligence. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted into something harder. Speaking of which, there's something you should know. About Vivian Caldwell. Arya's stomach tightened. What about her? The airline's corporate team reviewed Captain Morrison's report this morning, along with the viral video from the flight. They've revoked her executive platinum status, banned her from all Sterling Global properties, and flagged her account across the airline alliance network. She won't be flying first class on any major carrier for the foreseeable future. The information landed with unexpected weight. Arya had wanted consequences for Vivian's behavior, had even threatened as much during their confrontation. But hearing that it had actually happened, that the woman's precious status had been stripped away, felt surreal. Wow. That's serious. It is, Graham agreed, but necessary. The airline industry takes passenger safety and crew welfare seriously. Vivian didn't just harass you, she tried to create a panic situation over a routine maintenance alert. She endangered everyone on that flight with her behavior. The company can't tolerate that, regardless of how much money she spent with them over the years. Will she sue? Probably. People like her usually do when they don't get their way. But the airline has everything documented. Morrison's report, witness statements, the video evidence. She won't win. She'll just waste money on lawyers and make herself look worse. He paused. How do you feel about it? Arya considered the question carefully. How did she feel? Vindicated, certainly. Satisfied that Vivian would face real consequences for her actions. But there was something else, too. A hollowness beneath the satisfaction. Because punishing Vivian didn't fix the system that had created her, didn't address the countless other Vivians out there, in other seats on other flights, treating other people like they were less than human. I feel like it's justice, she said finally, but not victory, because she's just one person. The real problem is bigger than her. Graham nodded slowly. That's a very mature perspective. And you're right. Individual accountability matters, but systemic change matters more. Which is part of why this deal with the consortium is so important. You're not just selling them technology, you're changing how they think about safety, about data, about who gets to be an expert in their industry. A 28-year-old black woman who dropped out of grad school, Arya said wryly. Exactly. You're breaking every assumption they have about what innovation looks like, who it comes from. And every time they see your system catch something their traditional methods missed, they'll have to reckon with the fact that they almost passed on this because you didn't fit their mental image of a credible expert. The thought sent a thrill through her. This was bigger than revenge, bigger than proving Vivian Caldwell wrong. This was about fundamentally shifting who got taken seriously in spaces that had been closed to people like her for generations. I need to call my mother, Arya said suddenly. She's probably seen the video by now, and she's going to have opinions. Graham laughed. Go ahead, I'll handle the check. Meet me in the lobby when you're ready. Arya stepped outside into London's crisp morning air, pulled out her phone, and dialed. Her mother answered on the first ring. Arya Michelle Knox, I have been trying to reach you for 6 hours. Hi, Mom, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Better than fine, actually. Better than fine. Baby, you went viral for arguing with some racist woman on a plane, and then I see posts saying you closed some huge business deal, and I don't know whether to be proud or worried, or are you really okay? The concern in her mother's voice cracked something open in Arya's chest. For all her strength, all her confidence, she was still her mother's daughter. Still the girl who'd called home crying after her first investor rejection. Still the person who needed to hear that she'd done the right thing. I'm okay, Mom. I promise. It was a lot. The woman on the plane said some really awful things, made assumptions about why I was in first class, treated me like I didn't belong there. And you stood up for yourself. Her mother's voice was fierce now. I saw the video, baby. Saw you refuse to back down, refuse to make yourself smaller. I have never been more proud of you in my entire life. Tears stung Arya's eyes. It was scary. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing, if I was making it worse. You were doing exactly what I raised you to do, demanding the respect you deserve, not asking for it, not hoping for it, demanding it. Her mother's voice softened. I know it's hard. I know you're tired of having to fight for basic dignity. But baby, every time you refuse to accept less than your worth, you make it easier for the next woman, the next black girl who walks onto that plane. You change what's possible. Arya wiped her eyes. I closed the deal, Mom. $5.2 billion, 7 airlines. We're going to implement Nebula's system across their entire fleets. The shriek that came through the phone made Arya hold it away from her ear. 5 billion? Arya, baby! Oh my God! I'm calling your aunt right now. We're having a party. You're not allowed to say no. Mom, I'm in London. I don't care if you're on Mars. We're celebrating. My daughter just, oh, your Uncle James would be so proud. So proud, baby. The mention of Uncle James made Arya's throat tighten. I know, I thought about him during the demo. about how this could have saved him, could save so many others. It will, her mother said with absolute certainty. You're going to save lives, Arya, change the industry, and you're going to do it while being exactly who you are, unapologetically brilliant, unapologetically black, unapologetically yourself. They talked for another 10 minutes, her mother firing questions about the deal and the implementation and when Arya would be home. By the time they hung up, Arya felt lighter, steadier, ready for whatever came next. Graham was waiting in the lobby, looking amused. Good call? The best, Arya said. My mom's already planning a party, as she should be. Come on, we've got meetings. The rest of the day was a whirlwind. Meetings with Graham's team to discuss scaling strategies. Calls with the consortium's legal departments to outline contract terms. A video conference with Arya's own team back in New York, where Marcus Chen's celebration involved champagne and confetti cannons and at least 3 people crying happy tears. Between meetings, Arya checked her phone and watched the story continue to evolve. The viral video had spawned think pieces about racism in travel, discrimination in first-class spaces, and the broader dynamics of who gets believed and respected in professional environments. CNN had run a segment. The Guardian had published an interview with the woman from 4C who'd congratulated Arya mid-flight. Someone had created a crowdfunding campaign to support companies owned by women of color in STEM, directly citing Arya's story as inspiration. And through it all, one narrative kept emerging. This wasn't just about one woman on one flight. It was about every person who'd ever been made to feel like they didn't belong. Every professional who'd had their credentials questioned. Every expert who'd been dismissed because they didn't fit someone's narrow definition of what authority looked like. Arya was becoming a symbol. She wasn't sure how she felt about that. By evening, she was back in her hotel room at the Savoy, exhausted but wired. She ordered room service, pasta and wine, comfort food for a day that had redefined her entire future, and finally allowed herself to just sit, to process. Her phone rang, unknown number with a New York area code. She answered cautiously. Hello? Ms. Knox, this is Sarah Martinez from the National Transportation Safety Board. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. Arya sat up straighter. The NTSB, the federal agency responsible for investigating aviation accidents and making safety recommendations. Not at all. What can I do for you? I've been following the news about your deal with the European Aviation Consortium, and I've been reviewing the research papers you published about predictive failure analysis. Your work is remarkable. Exactly the kind of proactive approach we've been advocating for years, but haven't been able to get enough industry buy-in to implement widely. Thank you. That means a lot, coming from the NTSB. I'm calling because we'd like to discuss potential collaboration. The FAA is currently reviewing regulations around predictive maintenance requirements, and your system could be instrumental in setting new standards. Would you be open to presenting your research to a joint NTSB-FAA working group? Arya's heart raced. This was bigger than just airline contracts. This was about shaping federal policy, about making predictive analytics not just available, but required. Absolutely, she said. I'd be honored. Excellent. I'll have my assistant send you the details. And Ms. Knox, thank you for the work you're doing. The industry needs people like you, people willing to challenge the status quo and push for real change. The call ended, and Arya sat staring at her phone. Federal regulations, industry standards, the potential to make what Nebula had built not just successful, but mandatory. Uncle James would have loved this. She was about to call Marcus when her phone buzzed with an email notification. The subject line made her breath catch. Personal message, V. Caldwell. For a long moment, Arya just stared at it. Then, against her better judgment, she opened it. The email was brief, formal, carefully worded. Miss Knox, I am writing to apologize for my behavior on Flight 447. My comments and actions were inappropriate, disrespectful, and unacceptable. I allowed my frustration over a seating issue to escalate into something far worse, and I am deeply sorry for the pain and discomfort I caused you. I have no excuse for my conduct. I can only tell you that I am ashamed of my actions and committed to examining the prejudices that led to them. I understand if you cannot forgive me. I simply wanted you to know that I recognize the harm I caused and take full responsibility for it. Respectfully, Vivian Caldwell. Arya read it 3 times, searched for insincerity, for legal positioning, for any hint that this was anything other than a genuine apology. She couldn't find it. The email sounded like it came from someone who'd had a very bad day followed by some very hard realizations, someone who'd lost something she valued and had been forced to confront why. Arya didn't respond immediately. She let the email sit, turned it over in her mind. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to let Vivian sit with her discomfort the way Arya had sat with hers throughout that awful flight. Part of her wanted to write back something cutting, something that would make Vivian understand exactly how it felt to be dismissed and degraded. But mostly, she just felt tired. Tired of carrying anger. Tired of fighting battles that shouldn't need to be fought. Tired of the emotional labor required to exist in spaces that weren't designed for her. Finally, she typed a response. Mrs. Caldwell, I appreciate you taking the time to apologize. What happened on that flight should never have happened, and I hope you'll use this experience to examine not just your individual actions, but the assumptions that led to them. I hope you'll think about the countless other people who've experienced similar treatment and didn't have the resources or platform to push back. And I hope you'll use whatever privilege and influence you have to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. That's the only apology that really matters, the one that creates change. Sincerely, Arya Knox. She sent it before she could second-guess herself. Closed her laptop, drank her wine. Forgiveness was complicated. Vivian had caused real harm, had revealed ugly prejudices, had made Arya feel unsafe and unwelcome. An apology didn't erase that, didn't undo the damage. But maybe it was a start. Maybe it was one person beginning to recognize their complicity in a broken system. And if enough people had that recognition, maybe the system itself would start to change. Maybe. The next morning, Arya woke to discover that the press conference had been moved up to Thursday at Graham's insistence. He wanted to capitalize on the momentum from the viral story, wanted the world to see Arya Knox not as a victim of discrimination, but as a powerhouse who just revolutionized an industry. The conference was held at the Royal Aeronautical Society's headquarters in London, a grand building that spoke of aviation history and tradition. Arya stood backstage in her best suit, navy blue, perfectly tailored, the armor she wore when she needed to be taken seriously, and watched through the curtain as the room filled with reporters. Graham appeared beside her, straightening his tie. Ready to change the world? I already changed it, Arya said. Now I just have to convince them to pay attention. He laughed. Trust me, after the week you've had, you have their full attention. Just be yourself. Tell them why this matters. Tell them about your uncle. Give them the human story behind the technology. The introduction came from Anders Johansson himself, the skeptical Nordic Air CEO who'd grilled Arya hardest during the demo. He spoke about the consortium's commitment to safety, about the revolutionary nature of Nebula's system, about their confidence that this partnership would set new industry standards. Then he said, and now I'd like to introduce the brilliant mind behind this technology, founder and CEO of Nebula Dynamics, Dr. Arya Knox. Arya walked out to applause, stood behind the podium, looked out at dozens of cameras, hundreds of faces, and told them everything. She told them about Uncle James, about the plane crash that had taken him and 42 others, about the sensor that had been failing for weeks but kept getting cleared, about the moment she'd decided that she would spend her life making sure it never happened again. She told them about building the algorithm in her dorm room, about dropping out of grad school because she couldn't wait 3 more years to start saving lives, about the investors who'd laughed her out of meetings and the industry experts who'd dismissed her as too young, too inexperienced, too ambitious. She told them about the system itself, how it worked, what it could do, why it mattered. She showed them videos of the live demo from the flight, explained how the algorithm had caught the engine vibration that conventional monitoring had missed. And then she talked about the flight itself, about Vivian Caldwell, though she didn't use her name, about the assumptions, the discrimination, the casual cruelty that people of color faced in spaces where they weren't expected. I've spent my entire career proving that I belong in rooms where people don't expect me, Arya said, her voice steady and clear. Proving that my ideas have value, proving that expertise doesn't have a single face or background or credential set. And I'm tired of it. Tired of spending energy on proving instead of creating. Tired of fighting for basic respect instead of just doing the work. She paused, let that sink in. But here's what I learned on that flight. Sometimes the fight is the work. Sometimes refusing to back down, refusing to accept less than you deserve, refusing to make yourself smaller, that's exactly what creates change. Because every time we stand our ground, we make it easier for the next person. We shift what's possible. We rewrite the rules about who gets to be an expert, who gets to innovate, who gets to change the world. The room was absolutely silent. So yes, I'm proud of this deal with the consortium, proud of the technology we've built, proud of the lives we're going to save. But I'm also proud that I didn't apologize for taking up space, didn't pretend that discrimination was just a misunderstanding, didn't make myself smaller so someone else could feel comfortable. She gripped the podium. Because that's not how we create change. We create change by being unapologetically excellent, by demanding the respect we've earned, by refusing to accept a world where some people have to prove their worth while others have it assumed, and by building systems, whether they're algorithms or policies or cultural norms, that make excellence accessible to everyone, not just the people who fit someone's narrow definition of what a genius looks like. The applause when she finished was thunderous. Questions came rapid fire. About the technology, about the implementation timeline, about her plans for expansion. Arya answered them all with confidence born from preparation and genuine expertise. She wasn't performing anymore, wasn't pretending. She was just being exactly who she was, brilliant, driven, unapologetic. After the conference, she did a round of one-on-one interviews. BBC, CNN, Bloomberg, The Guardian. Each one asking some variation of the same question. How did it feel to go from being discriminated against on a flight to closing a $5 billion deal in the same 12 hours? It feels like vindication, Arya told them. But more than that, it feels like proof that the people who try to make you small are usually the ones most threatened by your potential. Vivian Caldwell looked at me and saw someone who didn't belong. The European Aviation Consortium looked at my work and saw the future of their industry. I know which assessment I trust. By the time she finished the last interview, it was evening again. Graham took her to dinner at an exclusive club in Mayfair where they celebrated with champagne and discussed next steps. The contracts would be finalized within 2 weeks. The pilot program with Lufthansa would begin in 30 days. Nebula would need to triple its staff within 6 months. You're going to be incredibly busy, Graham said, and incredibly successful. The question is, what are you going to do with that success? Arya had been thinking about that. I want to create a scholarship fund for students from underrepresented backgrounds pursuing aerospace engineering. Full funding, tuition, housing, stipends for research. Remove every barrier that kept people like me out of the field for so long. That's beautiful, Graham said, and smart, investing in the next generation of innovators. Also, Arya continued, I want to establish a whistleblower protection program at Nebula. Make it safe for anyone in the company to call out discrimination, harassment, or inequity without fear of retaliation. Build the culture I wish existed everywhere. Graham raised his glass. To building a better world, one algorithm and one policy at a time. They clinked glasses. 3 days later, Arya flew back to New York. First class on a Sterling Global flight, naturally. The crew recognized her immediately. The viral video had made her face famous and treated her with a level of respect that felt both wonderful and sad. Wonderful because it was genuine. Sad because she knew it was partly because she was famous now, not just because she was a person who deserved basic dignity. The flight was smooth, uneventful, no drama, no confrontations, just 7 hours to think about everything that had changed. When she landed at JFK, Marcus Chen was waiting at arrivals with flowers and a banner that read, "Congratulations, Dr. Knox," even though she'd never finished her doctorate. I took liberties, he said, grinning. You earned it through lived experience. The team had planned a surprise party at their office, champagne and catering, and a cake decorated with an airplane and the Nebula logo. Everyone was there, all 12 employees who'd believed in this vision when it was nothing but impossible ambition. Arya stood in the middle of her team, surrounded by people who'd worked 80-hour weeks for startup salaries and equity that might never pay off. and felt tears sting her eyes again. "We did it," she said simply. "We actually did it." You did it," Marcus corrected. "We just helped." "No," Arya said firmly. "We did this together. Every line of code, every late night, every pitch that failed, we built this together, and we're going to see it through together. All of us." The celebration lasted hours. Eventually, people drifted home, exhausted and happy. Arya stayed late, walking through the office that had been their war room for 5 years. The whiteboard still covered in equations, the walls decorated with inspiration quotes and Uncle James's photograph. She stood in front of that photograph for a long time. "We did it, Uncle James," she whispered. "We built something that could have saved you, that will save others. I hope that matters. I hope you'd be proud." The photograph didn't answer, but Arya felt something settle in her chest anyway. Peace, maybe. Or just the knowledge that she'd honored his memory in the only way that really mattered, by making sure his death meant something, by turning tragedy into purpose. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hi, Ms. Knox, this is Bethany from Flight 447. I saw the news about your deal. I just wanted to say congratulations and thank you for handling everything with such grace. You inspired me to stand up for myself, too. I filed a report about how the airline initially pressured you to move instead of addressing the real problem. They're implementing new training protocols because of it. So thank you. You changed more than you know." Arya smiled, typed back a quick thank you. Bethany was right. Change rippled outward in ways you couldn't always predict. One woman refusing to give up her seat had sparked conversations about discrimination, about who gets believed, about how systems perpetuate inequality. And maybe, just maybe, those conversations would lead to real change. The weeks that followed were a blur of contracts and hiring and implementation planning. The pilot program with Lufthansa launched successfully. The NTSB presentation went so well they invited Arya to consult on new federal regulations. Forbes ran a cover story. Time named her to their list of most influential people in technology. And through it all, Arya remembered Seat 1A. Remembered the moment she'd stood up to Vivian Caldwell and refused to back down. Remembered choosing to take up space instead of shrinking to make others comfortable. That moment had changed everything. Not because it made her famous, not because it went viral, but because it taught her that her worth wasn't up for negotiation. That she didn't need anyone's permission to be brilliant. That the people who tried to diminish her were usually the ones most threatened by what she could become. 6 months after the flight, Arya was back at Heathrow for a follow-up meeting with the consortium. She boarded a Sterling Global flight, and the gate agent did a double-take when scanning her boarding pass. "Ms. Knox, welcome back. We've upgraded you to our new Diamond Suite. Complimentary, of course." Arya smiled but shook her head. "That's very kind, but 1A is perfect. It's where I closed the deal that changed my life. I'd like to keep the tradition." The gate agent looked confused but processed it. Arya walked onto the plane, past the galley where Marcus and Diane weren't working this flight, past row 2 where Vivian Caldwell would never sit again. She settled into seat 1A and pulled out her laptop. There was work to do, always work to do. But now it was work that mattered, work that was changing an industry, work that was saving lives. The plane pushed back from the gate. The engines rumbled, and as they climbed into the sky above London, Arya looked out at the world below and thought about how far she'd come. From a grad school dropout to a founder closing billion-dollar deals. From a woman told she didn't belong to someone rewriting the rules about who gets to belong. From fighting for a seat to building a future where no one would have to fight for theirs. She opened her laptop and got to work, because the world wasn't going to change itself. But she was going to help. One algorithm, one policy, one refused seat at a time.